Men have ventured into the labyrinth of their own desires, convinced they understand every twist and turn of their hearts, yet they remain woefully ignorant of the shadows that dance just beyond the flicker of their own reason. Plato never sat down to offer a playbook for seduction or a manual for courting women, but if you peel back the layers of his dialogues with unflinching honesty, you'll discover a far deeper reckoning. The disease isn't out there, in the seductive smile of a stranger, but in the untrained corridors of the male mind. Long before men learned to bow to beauty, before they succumbed to the soft whispers of the feminine, Plato had already diagnosed the fundamental malpractice of the soul, the blindness of man to the forces that manipulate his own psyche. You recall the famous allegory of the cave from the Republic, where prisoners chained in darkness stare at shadows cast on the wall, believing those illusory forms to be reality. They worship the distortions. They build their entire existence on lies projected by unseen others. Yet what Plato didn't explicitly say, and what most men never dare admit, is that among those shadows is the idea of woman herself. Not woman in her authentic essence, but the phantom of womanhood as conceived by the ungoverned male mind. This spectre is no mere cultural artifact. It is one of the most potent deceptions ever devised, a grand theater where men willingly don the masks of ignorance. Consider how Plato warned that the masses will always defend their illusions with fierce tenacity. They will see the light of truth and turn away, preferring the comfort of shadows over the pain of clarity. And no illusion has ever proved more intoxicating, no fantasy more fiercely guarded, than the notion that women are harmless, pure, incapable of cunning. You've been taught to believe that a woman's laughter is love, her tears sincerity, her fleeting touch destiny. Yet to Plato this is the hallmark of a prisoner, one who refuses to break the chains of his own making by looking beyond appearances. True knowledge begins when you admit you know nothing. Wisdom commences with the precise definition of terms, he wrote. But how many men take the time to define woman based on her intrinsic nature, rather than the projection of their wants and fantasies? How many approach feminine influence with the same rigor they apply to matters of war, politics, or commerce? Virtually none. And thus women dominate the emotional terrain of men, not through elaborate schemes, but simply by existing as mirrors that reveal the weaknesses men refuse to confront. It isn't that women conspire to entrap you or plot your downfall. It's your own self-deception that hands them the keys to your heart. Each smile draws forth the wild horse of your soul. Each glance fans the flames of appetite. You celebrate these reactions as proof of love, yet Plato would have laughed at such delusions. He knew the worst of deceits is self-deception. You deceive yourself into thinking rationality governs your feelings, but in truth you are a prisoner whose chains are wrapped not around your wrists, but around your mind. Imagine the soul as a chariot drawn by two horses, one noble, guided by reason, the other wild, driven by passion and desire. The charioteer, your higher self, must master both if he is to ascend to truth. But all too often, the wild horse drags you toward the object of your desire, and you relinquish the reins without a second thought, mistaking the ride for freedom rather than bondage. In the Symposium, Plato speaks of love not as mutual happiness, but as a divine madness sent by the gods, a force that blinds men to all but the image of beauty, that consumes their judgment and reduces their souls to worship of the ephemeral. Yes, divine madness, but madness nonetheless. If you cannot master it, you become nothing more than a puppet, dancing on the strings of an illusion you mistake for destiny. Women sense this madness intuitively. They may not consciously plot to exploit it, but they know, whether by instinct or experience, the power that resides in a man who has not disciplined his soul. She doesn't need to manipulate you with cunning dialogue or Machiavellian strategy. She only needs to occupy space in your mind as the prize you must earn. You elevate her to your purpose, invest her with meaning, and in doing so you forfeit your autonomy. Plato warned that those who cannot govern themselves will be governed by others, by tyrants, sophists, flatterers of every stripe. Who is a greater flatterer than the enchanting figure who reflects back to you the validation you so desperately crave? And you, eager to please, surrender your dignity, purpose, mission, all for the chance to be deemed worthy. Ask yourself, when did you last question why you chase after women? When did you pause to examine whether their affection draws you toward truth or deeper into fantasy? Most men never ask, because such introspection demands courage, and with courage comes the admission of error, the painful recognition that the stories of love, devotion, and destiny we narrate to ourselves are but smoke and mirrors. Until you confront that truth, until you turn from the cave and stare unflinchingly at the source of illumination, you will remain enslaved, not to women, but to the idea of women that you've built and worshipped. Plato understood that society thrives on narratives designed to maintain obedience. Nowhere is this clearer than in the tale men have been sold about women. She completes you, they say. She holds the key to your happiness. Plato saw through this lie. In the Republic, he argues that the masses must be ruled by those who have glimpsed the truth. Yet tragically, most men never become sovereigns of their own minds. The soul, Plato held, comprises three parts: reason, spirit, and appetite. Reason longs for wisdom, spirit seeks honor, appetite craves pleasure. Observe how many men live in the realm of appetite when it comes to women. A smile yields pleasure, attention offers validation. A caress grants a fleeting sense of being alive. But this is the lowest stratum of the soul, the part that must be governed by reason, or else it will steer the chariot to ruin. Thus women wield terrifying influence, not because they are inherently manipulative, but because they need only feed your appetite to command you. You sell your soul for another taste, like a parched traveler begging for drops of water over which you once held sovereignty. Look around. Men have betrayed families for a stranger's embrace, shattered empires for the approval of one who might not even respect them, ended their own lives when affection withdrew. What more compelling testimony to the fact that men are ruled by their appetites? Here lies Plato's most urgent warning. No man is free who is not master of himself. Wealth, status, followers, even the adulation of countless women means nothing if a single glance can break you. Plato insisted that the downfall of a city begins when pleasure subsumes discipline. And what is modern society if not a graveyard of men who built golden cages of feminine approval? You see it in politics, religion, culture, men bowing not to principle but to the fear of losing favor. Yet Plato never counseled hatred toward women. He urged clarity. The woman is not your adversary. She is the mirror reflecting the untrained tides of your own soul. She plays the game because you invited her, blind and unprepared. But you can reverse the conquest. You can stand unshackled, reclaiming dominion over your mind, if you dare confront the greatest terror most men flee, the truth about themselves. Women test men, not to harm them, but to expose weaknesses that already dwell within. They sense where the charioteer is most vulnerable, the whisper of ego, the flutter of unexamined desire, and they probe those spots. Yet every time you yield, you aren't conquered by her, you betray your own sovereignty. Plato, in Gorgias, declared it better to suffer injustice than to commit it, because the man who commits injustice proves powerless over his desires. What greater injustice exists than the one you inflict upon your own soul when you compromise your values, beg for validation, and forsake your mission under the guise of love? Plato's cure is as profound as his warning. The highest purpose of man is the pursuit of the good, the ascent from shadows to light, even if that light sears your eyes. Most men refuse to face this blaze. They remain enthralled by the mirage, convinced their hearts beat for another, when in truth they beat for the hollow worship of an illusion. The path out of the cave demands that you look not at the reflection, but at the source of the flame. And in doing so, you will never regard women as you once did. You will see them not as goddesses nor as fiends, but as sacred mirrors showing you the boundless potential of a soul governed by reason rather than fancy. Imagine stepping out of the cave of conventional men's thinking, leaving behind the golden bars and velvet chains you built with your own fear and desire, and standing in a realm where nothing but truth governs your actions. This is the state of the philosopher king Plato envisioned, a man who has mastered himself, unshaken by the cacophony of the masses, impervious to the irresistible lures of the appetitive horse. In this state, a woman's presence no longer shakes the charioteer's hands. Her beauty becomes merely one of the stars in a vast cosmos of being, not the sun itself. You cease to be a beggar for her attention and instead stand as an equal, as a man who owes his allegiance only to the highest principles of his own soul. Such a man is not manipulated, for there is no weakness to exploit, no unexamined desire that can be twisted into chains. This transformation begins when you demand courage from yourself, the courage to ask why you pursue women at all. Is it to seek illumination, to grow closer to truth, or simply to chase the shadow of your own appetites? Most men avoid this question because its answer threatens every story they tell themselves about love. To face the truth is to risk the ruin of cherished illusions, but only through such ruin can the ground be prepared for genuine growth. Ask yourself, does she elevate your mind, challenge your convictions, broaden your perspective, or does she merely gratify a fleeting urge, amplify your vanity, confirm the illusions you prefer over reality? The difference between these two experiences is the chasm separating a life led by reason from one governed by the blind horse of appetite. When you encounter a woman, observe your inner landscape. Does your pulse quicken at the sight of her? Does your heart skip a beat? These are the stirrings of appetite. Notice too the stirrings of spirit, pride, honor, a desire to act nobly. And finally, notice reason, the quiet voice that asks, is this path aligned with truth? Does it honor my highest self? For too long men have allowed the loudest horse to dictate the journey, but the charioteer's duty is to guide all three with equanimity. This does not require disdain for beauty or contempt for affection. It simply demands governance, the refusal to let any passion ride roughshod over principle. As you develop this inner mastery, you will find your interactions with women and with life itself transformed from uncertain yearning into serene engagement. Recognize that the ultimate source of feminine power over you is not malice, but mutual humanity. Women, like men, are seekers of love, meaning, connection. Yet whereas Plato's philosopher refused to bow to shadows, most men collapse at the slightest reflection of affection. They mistake this collapse for devotion. But devotion born of weakness is servitude. Devotion born of strength is sacred alliance. A woman who truly values you will not seek to exploit your weaknesses, but to partner with your strengths. But even this partnership must be built on two sovereign souls, each free, each disciplined. Anything less invites the old cages to return, golden bars and velvet chains around your mind. Consider how easily civilizations crumble when discipline yields to pleasure. Plato saw this in the fall of Athens, where leaders compromised principles to woo the masses, where citizens abandoned civic duty for hedonistic distractions. Today's cultural landscape echoes that collapse. Men who abdicate their inner authority to chase validation. Millions who devote their days to scrolling, liking, seeking ephemeral affirmations. And at the heart of this cultural malaise is the ungoverned soul, the man who mistakes his appetite for his purpose. Plato taught that the good city rests on citizens who govern themselves. The good life rests on a soul ruled by reason. You can rebuild both, one man at a time, beginning with your own mind. How then do you cultivate this mastery? By relentless self-examination, by challenging every impulse. Why does she make you lose your composure? What stories do you tell yourself about her motives? What do you fear losing more, her affection or your self-respect? When you are tempted to chase, pause. Breathe. Recall the chariot's image and visualize pulling both horses in the direction of reason. Practicing this discipline in small moments rewires your mind. Emotion yields to intelligence. Desire bows to principle. Over time, you will discover that the wild horse, once so unruly, can be harnessed without cruelty, its strength redirected toward noble ends rather than blind indulgence. Plato's concept of divine madness in love does not imply that love itself is folly. Rather, it warns that love untethered to reason becomes madness. The cure is not the eradication of love, but the integration of love with wisdom. This integration births a new form of love, one that neither idealizes nor demonizes but sees clearly. It cherishes beauty while acknowledging its transience, revels in intimacy while acknowledging its transience, while anchoring itself in truth. Such love is not a master but a companion, walking with you toward the light rather than leading you deeper into shadow. To reach this state is to become a philosopher king in your own soul. Plato said the just man does not permit the lustful part of his soul to govern him. In our modern vernacular, this might sound austere, but it is profoundly liberating. Imagine living without the gnawing fear that a single look, a single text message, a single moment of silence could unmoor you. Imagine being at peace with yourself, knowing that your sense of worth flows from an unshakable core of principle, not from external validation. This is freedom in Plato's sense, freedom not of license, but of sovereignty. Once you stand in this sovereignty, you become immune to manipulation. A woman may smile, withdraw, cajole, or command, but your inner citadel stands firm. If she seeks your attention, it is because she respects the strength that drew her. If she challenges your convictions, it is to test the mettle that merits partnership. In every interaction, you will discern the dance of two sovereign souls, not the tug-of-war between hunger and flight. This is the kingdom Plato envisioned for the just man, a realm where the individual soul reigns supreme, not over others, but over itself. And so I challenge you, as Plato would, to turn from the shadows. Examine your motives, question your impulses. Define the idea of woman not by impulse or ideology, but by the highest standards of reason and virtue. Confront every reflection she casts in the mirror of your heart, asking whether it reveals a chain or a window to your truest self. Discover that the greatest conquest is not the conquest of another's heart, but the conquest of your own appetites. Only then will you earn the right to genuine love, love that is neither illusion nor enslavement, but the harmonious meeting of two disciplined souls. If this message resonates, if it ignites a determination to escape the cave, to embrace the arduous path of self-governance, then take action now. Reflect. Meditate. Read Plato with ruthless honesty and practice the art of self-mastery in every encounter. And if you found these words a spark, share them with a brother who still wanders in darkness. Subscribe to this channel to join a brotherhood of men committed to ruling their inner kingdoms. Follow the link in the description to access resources that will guide your ascent. This is more than a plea, it is a summons to reclaim your mind, to reclaim your life, to reclaim your destiny. Do not let this moment pass into shadow. Stand in the light of your own reason, and you will never again be a prisoner of mere appearances.